Look at yourself in the mirror and become your own best friend. It's going to be the most awkwardest, most hardest journey that you will ever start. And if you need a way to start it, I'll tell you how I started. I was very uncomfortable, even with the thought of standing in front of the mirror and saying positive affirmations. I had heard about it when I first went into therapy, and somebody within my life at that point was really encouraging me to do it. And I was like, that's awkward. That's weird. I ain't gonna do that.
Welcome back to the Own Your Awkward podcast. I'm your host, Andy Vargo, and every episode we get into what has made our guests vulnerable and how they've learned how to own their awkward in order to live their best life. Stay tuned so you can hear every awkward moment in today's show. Hey friends, this is going to be a fun, awkward episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Own Your Awkward podcast. I've got one of my newest friends right here in Tacoma, but making big waves around the world, Becca Boston. Becca, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing good, and thank you. I'm honored to be here, and yeah, in Tacoma, which is still wild for me to say, but I'm honestly really grateful to be in Tacoma now, and Tacoma is home. So
Yeah, we're still in the first year, right? Like still relatively new, or has it been?
yeah, I moved here 3 days before my birthday in February, so don't think I will ever forget the date. So it's been since February.
Wow, it
That's
seems
what, July?
longer than that, but that's exciting. But also, for those who aren't like following us around, Becca's one of those people that I met and then just keep popping up in the same places, which is what I love about Tacoma. It's like, oh, it's a Becca day. Oh, there's Becca again, which is so cool. And especially because you have such a positive message and such a great smile, which if you're not watching the video and you're listening to the recording, you're going to hear some great things, but definitely check out Becca's face. It's going to light you up just getting her smile. So, uh,
Thank you.
Becca, I'm just excited to have you here. Obviously, I won't fanboy too much, but uh, let's get into it. What I want to, we're going to get into it in a couple minutes. We're going to find out all the things you have going on. We're going to hear about your book, your mission, your speaking. Before we do that, what is something that's just good that you see going on in the world?
Something good that I see going on in the world. I feel like we're beginning to see more people begin to like link arms and create communities that are needed in a wide variety of different ways. And just being able to have more open and honest conversations. And obviously, yes, we still have growth within that, but I feel like there's still, more a willingness of people to step forward and share how they're truly feeling, whether that's about mental health or about a, social issue that they want to speak up on. I feel like at least people feel like they're safe enough to show up authentically as they are, to voice, what their opinion is or what their thought is or how they are, which then sparks conversation. And if we want change, we have to be able to start a conversation about it. So I think in a wide variety of different ways, just people speaking up and then creating community within that.
I absolutely love that. And the thing that I think is so beautiful about what you just shared is this thought that there are multiple communities that are needed for different reasons. And and we have to form those individual communities. I love the idea of linking arms where it's like we are here, we're not breaking this chain. I've got you, you've got me, and we're gonna have a louder voice together.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to link arms because we don't need to be giving piggybacks to people who have the ability to walk. We
Oh,
can guide somebody where they need to go and walk alongside of them, but ultimately like we're robbing them of their journey when we put them on our back because
yeah.
they need to go through their own journey to learn lessons that are meant for them.
Hmm.
Uh, and it can be hard, but being able to be by somebody's side as they're going through trials and tribulations and hard times, you're able to guide them and they're able to see new perspectives as long as they're willing, obviously, because you can't make somebody change if they don't want to change. But
Right.
yeah, I think allowing people to walk their own journey is really important.
Yeah, that is such a unique perspective that you don't hear a lot of people say. Because a lot of people are very, let's lift everybody up, let's help them, which is a noble thought in and of itself. but the best help is when you empower them to take those steps on their own.
Absolutely.
I love that. It's funny, as you were talking about these different communities, little aside, I was sitting at a stoplight today, and in front of me there was a car, and it was plastered with bumper stickers, just obnoxiously over the back, which is fun and cool. Not what I do to the back of my car, but everyone has their different style. But it had, I mean, you could tell from this car's bumper stickers, there was a humane society. My dog loves this kind of dog wear, what kind of pet food, everything. And I think it had everything except for what kind of breed they had, because I mean, you're used to seeing those stickers sometimes too. And I
Oh
thought,
yeah.
and I had this thought of not too long ago, I saw a similar car and it was all about the ocean and water and saving the fish and whatever hits the ground hits the sound and all the different mottos. And I thought, what that person's about. And they, I'm sure, are linking arms with somebody. And whether or not I'm that passionate about dogs or not, or about the fish or the water, we need people passionate about all these different causes. And it doesn't mean we all have to be at a 10 or 11 on the scale of getting behind every organization, but we need people doing that because someone needs that support, someone needs that help. Some dog somewhere needs help, some fish somewhere is getting choked out from chemicals, and we need everybody bringing all these things to our attention so that we can go, oh yeah, I should be a little more conscious.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've had a lot of people like tell me like they're afraid to start their own thing or, even just speak, so whether it's
Mhm.
starting a community or sharing their own story. And I share to everybody, each and every single one of us has a testimony. And within our testimony, it can create somebody else's survival guide because
Mm,
like what you're going through could help somebody else, but if you don't speak up and share that, you could be robbing somebody else of what they need in their life. So it really is about somebody just speaking up and then creating that community. So like if you started a community about cats, like I'm not gonna join because I'm not a cat person.
mhm.
But like if you start one about dogs, I'll join. I got a dog, she's
Right.
15, you know.
Mhm.
I would join that, but we tend to go things towards things that we like or that we can relate to. So the more that we can have that, and if it's the same common denominator, like you may relate to one person and not relate to somebody else. So you need to
Right.
find like your person that you can relate to and that can bring that value um and that light because we're all going to connect with different people differently.
Exactly. And sometimes you join those groups, not the cat group, but the dog group.
You're right.
You might show up to the dog group and then you find that one or two people that you really connect with, and you find out you have some other critical part of your story that really aligns, and you find support in that area. And it doesn't mean that everybody there is your new bestie, but it's like, you know what? I found some really valuable relationships out of this. And those are the ones that last well beyond. That's why when you look at work relationships that so rarely move beyond the time frame that you work together, but we probably all have one or two people over the years that we have kept in touch with, that we started out as work friends, and a host of people that the minute we left that door and had the cake in the break room, we've waved at them if we passed them by, but we've never, gone to lunch again or picked up the phone to say, hey, I miss talking to you at the water cooler.
Right.
you
And
know
I think that's why it's important to allow like every relationship to be fluid within your life. Like
Ah,
some people you're only gonna have those small interactions at the water cooler. And other people you're gonna talk to more weekly and maybe monthly. Everyone's gonna be different. So
right. And even though they're fluid, even though some have more meaning, they all have a place in your life in that time. So it doesn't mean they're not valuable, even if it was just, you know what? I used to chuckle every time I saw Joe with his shoes on backwards, and he didn't care, and he just was a funny guy. He would tell jokes, whatever. That's what that brought me, that got me through that time in my life. And that's enough.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Becca. What's awkward about you? We got to know. What's your awkward thing you've had to own? Because I see you just busting it up out there, and I know that doesn't come easy.
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's funny as I was thinking about it. Like, I think two things kind of come to mind, and I think it's things that I've really had to kind of really own. And in some ways, like people might not even know it, but I also think like, and you can correct me on how you feel about awkward, but I think when we think about the word awkward, or at least when I think about it, right? It's like that situation. Is it really awkward until somebody says it's awkward,
Right.
or is it like I just feel awkward and nobody else is saying anything?
That's
You
a
know?
really good point. It's like that all these riddles about, if a tree falls down and you're not there to hear it, like did it really make a sound and all that kind of stuff. It's like, was it awkward if I was the only one who felt it? Was it just awkward for me? And I think that's a very
I just feel like
personal
I hear that
story.
all the time is like, oh, it wasn't awkward until you said something.
Right.
Or it's like, okay, I'm not going to say anything because I feel awkward and I don't want to make anybody else feel awkward.
Right. Yeah. I think both are true where you have times where the room feels an awkwardness or something just feels off. And I'm a big fan of turning awkward into a positive word, but it's
Oh,
still
yeah.
something that is askew from the flow necessarily, right? Like, oh wait, that I didn't expect that, or I don't know how to respond to this. But you're right. I think there's both where the world is moving at a certain pace or the world around you, and
Right.
you notice something that's a little off step, and no one else would notice it if you weren't calling it out, or you're just like, am I?
I think it's also one of those things where it's like, is it because you genuinely feel awkward or is somebody else making you feel awkward?
Right. Yeah.
And if it's somebody else, then like maybe the problem isn't actually you. And
Exactly.
you should like work on that piece.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But I just went just down this like deep random like as I usually do, deep thinking of like what is actually awkward.
Mm-hmm. This was
But
my conversation in therapy this morning, which I don't know why the guy signs a disclosure because I just talk about it. I'm just like, I know you can't talk about it, but I'm just sharing with. But I was having this conversation around like, is it normal for people to just like have this snapshot back into time where you just are like thrown back there and you're living there and whatever. And he's like, and whatever the way I described it, he goes, well, I would say this is normal. That part's not normal, but in a good way, like that you're aware of your placement in it. And I was just going, like my therapist just said I'm not normal. Now I can't get that out of my head. But it is one of those like, oh crap, I really am the awkward one. And but it's true. You're just going, okay. And if people are making us feel awkward in a bad way, if people are making us feel like we're out of place in any situation, that's a really tough thing to learn to realize that it's not me, it's they're making me feel unwelcome. And so how do I make sure that I either don't attach to that person very often or manage the situation when I'm around them because that's not good for me. And that's a tough thing. I've experienced
yeah.
that myself.
And I would say, I was in a live on TikTok once and I actually named that I felt awkward because
Mhm.
it's hard when you're on a live and the chat isn't always, going and you either have to
Yeah.
just speak what's on your heart or you have to get people, that are watching you to engage. So I just straight up was like, I'm gonna own my awkward thinking of you. And I was like, I literally said, I feel awkward right now because I don't have anything laying on my heart, but like I want to talk with you guys, but I just want you to know I feel awkward because I'm not getting off. And somebody in my comments said, I love your awkward because awkward shows that you're real.
Yeah, oh,
I
exactly.
was like, ooh, that is a gem and a half. So that's always
Yeah.
kind of kept me like going in those awkward moments.
Yeah, I've had that conversation with people a lot where they're like, I don't know how to handle this situation or what do I do here? And a lot of it is about perception with other people. And
Yeah.
that's I mean, I tell people the same thing all the time. It's basically the same answer. It's address it. Just say, look, this
Yeah.
feels awkward. I don't know how to handle this situation, but I do know that this is sincere. Like I do know that I want to connect with you. I do know that I want to talk. I don't know what to say right now. And at
Yeah.
least they know your intent and they know that you're not being shifty by hiding something and going, "Oh gosh, I'm thinking through my words because I don't want Becca to know my true intent." It's me actually saying, I don't know the next question I'm going to ask. So this is getting a little awkward right now because I'm interviewing you on a podcast. but I do know that I want to really get as much out of this conversation as possible. And it opens up the chance for, someone to offer something different.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
That is beautiful. So,
Getting back
how
to
big,
those
I'm
things.
sorry?
I said yes. Getting back to the actual, I took us
Yeah. No,
off
no.
route.
So when you've run into this, clearly this is not like an easy thing where we just say, man, I can have this comfort to get in front of people and say this. And you mentioned your TikTok lives, which are amazing. People get on there. Uh, Becca just brings so much positive energy to the world. And especially on Wednesdays is when I've seen you doing the Win Wednesdays. And we're celebrating. Tell us about Win Wednesdays first. I don't want to put words into how you do that.
Yeah, thank you. One Wednesday is where the Stay Strong, Stay You community, so my community, comes together to celebrate life wins. No matter how big or small, we celebrate them all because we never want to lose sight of those small wins along the way because those small wins lead to the greater results in the future. So we come together as a community. We usually typically have a thought-provoking question, which my best friend co-hosts the live with me. So we're usually having those questions and engaging in those types of conversations. So that way we're also having a engaging conversation throughout the live, but then throughout the live, people drop their wins in the comments and we celebrate them. So even if your win is just getting up and getting out of bed, that's a win because even on those hard days when you're fighting depression, when you're going through a hard time, it can be hard and get tough to get out of bed. I do have a wide variety of people who are also celebrating their recovery within self-harm because that is something that I have also overcome. So I have a lot of people overcoming recovery, but we celebrate all wins, no matter how big or small, we celebrate them all as a community live on TikTok every Wednesday at 6:30 Pacific Standard Time.
It's awesome. And it's such a positive conversation. I
Yeah,
love that we're not trying to think of, did I buy a new car this week? Did I get promoted? I mean, those are big wins and worthy of celebrating if you're
yeah,
in that space. We're not going to be in that space every Wednesday. And sometimes
right,
it is, man, you know what? I didn't like ignore the phone all day. I at least answered the calls I needed to answer,
right,
or I woke up and I ate breakfast, like whatever
right.
that smallest thing is.
Well, and the big thing that I want to do too is like be able to show people what's possible. So like
Mhm.
when I do have somebody who's sharing a win that maybe I don't know how to get there, like then I know I can connect with that person, reach out and ask them questions. Or if somebody else doesn't know how to get to maybe where I am on some aspect of my journey, then I can then give them some tips or guidance. Obviously, I'm not like a mental health professional or anything, but I'll give what I can. So
Right.
I think just coming together to share a lived experience so we can help each other to get where we want to go.
Yeah. And there's something about getting advice that is not clinical medical advice that is actually so empowering, where it is, you know what? I can connect and I can relate to this person because all they're doing is sharing how they survived and what they got through. And that can mean so much.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
tell us, you've made a lot of changes in life. You mentioned self-harm recovery and all these things. How did you get to where you're at today, where you're connecting with people? Was this like a I'm going to be a TikTok star, I'm going to have millions of people following me and I can't wait, and I'm by design going to do this? Or how did life happen for you?
No, it is not, Andy. I would definitely say if we're talking about me owning something, I've definitely had to learn how to learn kind of how to own my awkwardness of being in front of the camera. For me, it's not always been easy. If anything, my college degree is in photography. So I actually thought that I was supposed to be the behind the scenes girl,
Right.
taking the photos, editing the photos. It's something I've always kind of had a passion for since high school. And that's where I thought I was going to be. And never expected to be where I am today with social media or as a best-selling author or even a speaker. But I jumped on TikTok in 2020 when, a couple things in the world went down, such as the pandemic, and TikTok kind of became my outlet platform where I was able to kind of just have some fun and just be able to make videos in a new way. And I just started doing it in unique different ways. And slowly, as I began to kind of continue on my journey, my platform got some recognition. And then as I was actually putting a lot of work into myself and kind of turning a lot of my pain into my power and just doing deep inner work, I came up with the motto, stay strong, stay you, which was helping me recognize that my strength is giving my pain a voice and receiving the help that is needed while staying true to who I am. And as I began saying that, people began to resonate and relate. And that's kind of how Stay Strong, Stay You was born. And started a community based off of one person having a very bad day in my life, and I told them I would do anything to make them laugh. And I took a tortilla and I bit a silly face out of it and put it up to the screen. And that was the start of
That
kind
was
of
the
our
beginning.
community. Huh?
That was the beginning of that.
That was the
I
beginning.
love that.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
picturing logos with tortilla smiley faces or buttons.
Oh, we still have our community. The OGs will not let me forget that day.
I bet. You know what's so endearing about what you just shared is your stay strong, stay you message, how that began as a message for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so relatable is that it is about, look, this is what I got to do for myself. This is where I had to come from. And I'm just sharing and whether it's for accountability or for support for you or for the chance to help somebody else initially, where you're like, you know what, I'm just going to share. This is what I'm doing. This is my reminder. I got to stay strong and I got to stay myself. And the world said, that is an amazing message. I need to hear that. And I need to remind that of myself. And that's where the best things are born, where it's not a big design.
Yeah, and I think for me it has kind of two deep inner meetings because in 2020 is when it was born and when the it really became, my motto for myself. And I really needed that during that time. And at the same time, part of my story is the story behind the smile, which a lot of people don't know is in a domestic violence relationship that I hid behind my smile for far too long. And my biggest regret is the fact that I did not speak up. So now that I'm able to help people recognize that your strength is speaking up, and giving your pain a voice and receiving the help that is needed, is also taking one of my biggest regrets in life and now turning it into my mission. So now I know that I can have peace with, at least within that regret,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that at least I turned it into something and I'm not gonna be regretting it for the rest of my life.
Right. And it's such an important reminder, too, that there are millions of people out there who aren't speaking up. It doesn't mean they're not going through something and they just haven't found that voice yet or haven't linked arms with somebody. And that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that. So tell us about, I know you've got a book out there, you got a book coming up. I don't know if you're ready to share on that yet. Tell us about all the things. What is the community like? How do people support you? What do you have that you want to make sure that they really know if they are looking for that support, looking for that voice? How do they find you? What you got coming up?
Yeah. I would say if you want to follow me on social media, that's where I'm probably the most active. You can hop in my DMs on either platform. I'm primarily most active on TikTok, which direct messages are not the best there.
Right.
But that's my largest platform and where I post most of my videos. So my handle for that is Becca Boston 6. And then if you want to message me, you want to follow me across all platforms, Instagram is Becca Boston 26. So those are the two platforms that I'm primarily on. And then my book is, yeah, it's called The Story Behind the Smile, Lessons Within My Life. It does take you through my journey of life where I was diagnosed at a very young age, with a learning disability. And with that, how to kind of learn how to own that and not allow it to define who I am. So I take you through my journey of being diagnosed and how I see it as my superpower today. So I walk you through the life lessons that I learned with that, take you through the domestic violence relationship, as well as me stepping out into the war of recovery and the lessons that I learned in recovery to kind of where I am in 2021. I think it's where I ended it. So it's called The Story Behind the Smile, Lessons Within My Life. It's available on Amazon. The best way to get to it though is if you go to one of my social media handles, because Amazon likes to give me a little bit of
Likes
issue.
it likes to hide things from
It
people.
likes to hide things. You can also
I've had
just
a hard time finding my
Google.
own book. I'm like, I wrote the book. I know I'm typing the title right.
Yeah,
Show
you
me
can
the
also
book.
just put it in Google for
Yeah.
me. Like
And
it, yeah.
and also if you're driving down the road and trying to write all this down, just we got the links right here in the description. So
Oh, I
we'll
appreciate
make it
it.
as easy
Yep.
as possible for you.
Yeah.
One thing I love that you mentioned is how you were defined early, or you were uh, diagnosed early on with learning disability, and you knew you didn't want that to define you, and yet at the same time, you're not allowing it to define you has created so much that's not defined because of that one thing, but by embracing it, you've actually gotten the book written. You've leaned into this community.
Mm.
Uh, was that something? Because that's something at an early age, we don't always have the maturity to make those decisions. Was that something you just knew right away, like I'm not letting this be a thing, or did that develop over time?
I would definitely say it's a big thing that I owe to my parents. My parents really made the intentional decision to one, sit me down and have that conversation and specifically tell me this is a part of you, but it is not who you are. And they were very intentional of always making sure that, I was involved with things that I loved. And showing me my gifts outside of the classroom and not always having the focus being on school or my weaknesses. So I really owe a lot of being able to not define myself by my learning disability to my parents. I will say, as an adult, it's something that I've had to continue to kind of lean into and kind of own the awkwardness of having a learning disability, especially within like jobs and certain aspects. For example, if you
Mhm.
want a good laugh, I will never forget the time I was working at Panera and we all wanted to order pizza, right? So we decided on a pepperoni pizza and I was gonna call it in. And why was everybody circling me while I was making the call?
No
I
pressure, right?
genuinely don't know. But everybody was like watching me call in the order. And I literally ordered and asked the person, can I get a predicament on the pizza? I literally had like this brain fart of what pepperoni was.
Right.
Um, and I just said predicament, and everybody just started like busting out
Now they
laughing and
probably think it's a prank call because they can hear the background.
like so I don't know what goes on a predicament pizza, but if anybody like wants to hop in my DMs, let me
Yeah.
know. But like, yeah. So there's just like I've had really had to learn, and again, I think like my especially my dad has been able to really help me like own the humor within it
Hmm.
and just be okay with like laughing at myself.
Right.
I think that's one thing like I kind of wish I showed a little bit more behind the scenes on social media is my humor about
Hmm.
things. But man, if I tell you, if I were to save every video that I like messed up on,
Right.
I'd have so many. And I've really thought about like doing it, and I should so people
Yeah,
can
it's
see
never too late. Like there will be
really
plenty of
what I do.
content.
But I've also gotten in like the habit of like I'll make a small, mess up or whatever. And it's not that I'm trying to be perfect, but like it's for me, it's putting in the reps, as you know, of
Yeah.
being a speaker. Um, but yeah, I think just learning to own who I am and not being afraid to laugh at myself and be able
Right.
to give myself that permission because if I'm laughing at myself and having fun, then like I can't get mad at you if you're laughing at me with
Right.
me.
And it's those situations are so hard because we can choose to be hurt when people laugh at us making a mistake, but that moment is a funny thing to say. Like it's a funny moment, and people are gonna laugh out of reaction of like, why'd she say that? Not
Right.
even knowing that you may or may not have intentionally done it. Like you're just laughing in the moment. And there is that line where it becomes bullying that we have to be aware of. Now, are
Right.
people making fun of me? But if they're just laughing at, hey, this funny thing happened because of who I am, that has some humor in it, and that's okay. And that's where it's such a line that we have to
And
walk.
I'd also say you also have to know that laughter can be a coping mechanism. That's something that
Very
I
true.
had to learn within myself as well to be like, oh, I need to take this laughter mask off and actually face it head on,
Right.
what is
Yeah,
not
I've
always.
had my own share of that, just, not being comfortable in my own skin till, not that long ago, where it's like, how many times did I crack a joke in order to deflect the attention or,
Hmm.
say something smart ass because I didn't want to address the real issue.
Hmm.
And and so many times I didn't even know I was doing that intentionally. Like it was just so ingrained in who I was that you're right. You have to sit there and say, "Oh gosh, I gotta pop that mask off and actually have a real conversation right now," which is scary as hell, but it can be so freeing at the same time.
Yeah, here's another one that I wonder if you've ever felt awkward about. Have you ever felt awkward about owning your energy?
Yes, I have actually. I've had that where I've had to just be like there'll be a very serious situation and I'm upbeat still. And it's like, it's not that I don't understand the weight of this. It's just, this is how I deal with this situation. And so I'm just trying to tell you, it's not that I don't understand that, we might all die in this building. I just think it might be a funny way to go. And so, like there's going to
Yeah,
be a funny story here later. And I'm seeing that right now. But you're right, where you do have to, because it's one of the most awkward moments is when your energy is off from the rest of the room. And so being able to own that is an important thing. And I didn't understand that for a long time, where I just thought, what is wrong with me? Or is it, to me, it came across as immaturity, where it was not understanding a situation, not taking the gravity of it. And it's like, no, I just have a different energy going on right now.
yeah. So for me, I recognize and I think the proof is on the TikTok. If you scroll back a couple years, you will see that I am not this energetic.
Mm,
I did not have, I don't think I had the confidence to really own it, or I haven't, or I didn't like discover it yet.
yeah.
Uh, and it's taken me years to be like, I just have a really high energy system.
Hmm.
That's what I
Yeah.
call it. And I do. And it's one thing that I always get complimented on, and I'm grateful for it. But at the same time, like you said, like I have to learn where to bring it. But I think it's also funny because then there's the people who know me. Like I have this one friend, knows me online, knows me offline. We see each other probably like once a year, but I think it was like last summer, this summer before, we all went to this a big event. We had a conference and we all went out to we all went out to eat. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like quiet as a dog. And he literally said, I look like a deer in headlights. He was like, are you okay? Like, I'm genuinely concerned about you. But what he didn't know and what he didn't understand was it's not that my energy was down, like, I was still good. But for somebody who's neurodivergent, like myself, with an auditory processing disorder, like, there's so many different types of conversations happening. And then
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep up on one conversation while getting distracted about the conversation they're having, but then I want to give input about the conversation we had previously, but like you moved on too quickly. So then I don't know what.
Yeah. So I don't even know how to chase that.
Right, but then I'm also like I'm also just happy and content with like just being in a good environment. I don't always need to be talking. Like as long as I'm around good people, like y'all talk. I'll just be the chill one off to the
Yeah.
side.
And I
Like
think that really does throw people off when they meet somebody and they're used to your, like for me, like your on stage personality or your online personality. And then they meet you in person and you hear this a lot where like, oh, well, they weren't at all like themselves or they were a snob in person. It's like, well, maybe they were just off the camera and just having some lower energy, but not bothered by you at all. Because like when we've met in person, it's not like, "Hey, Becca, how's it?" I mean, I can be a little that way, but you're like, "Hey, chill, good to see you. What's up?" And like, but we're also in
exactly.
a very busy place. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to take in,
Yeah.
and you're not coming up going, "Do you ever feel like this?" And guess what? And that's normal human interaction. But
Right.
when we feel like we know somebody because we only see them in one slice of their life, or it's like if you saw someone that you always saw taking your order at a coffee shop, they're not going to be acting that way when they run into you at the park. They're not going to be asking you about like, hey, all this stuff. It's like hey, good to see you. That's cool. Go about your day.
Right. Well, and I think it's also too like I recently, well, in April went to the Cheer Choice Awards, which is like a big social
Mhm.
media award show for influencers. And one thing that I was reminded there too of like sometimes you also don't know what's gone on in that person's day or
Right.
like or their internal boundaries that they have for themselves. Like I'm not going to say who the creator is, but one creator told me that they would, we would do a dance with each other. And is somebody that I highly look up to, has a big platform. But he saw me, we were like, okay, we'll do it later. But then later he said no or whatever. I don't know what happened earlier in his day, but like I respect people's boundaries.
Yeah.
That dance can
Hmm.
wait. That dance
Hmm.
is not as important as me respecting that person's boundary. And I think that's
Right.
something that people often don't take into consideration is
Hmm.
also the boundaries that we have outside of a screen.
Yeah, I was listening to this video. It was Jim Rohn, old motivational speaker. But and this video was from like 1992. You should have seen the hair on the screen of the people in the audience. It was like,
I love that.
it's like you're watching an old video when you're looking at the wardrobe and the hair. It's like I was like, oh my God, this is dated a while back. But he was talking about how for himself, who at the time he was a huge name, he's in the middle of his fame, and how to get away he gets in his motorhome and he goes like on the back forestry service roads to get he's as far away, and he said when you're in a public life you really value solitude, like that's you see a different value on it. And it was the first time where I was like, man, I can relate, because I have had times where I'm sitting at home on a Friday or Saturday night, just quiet silence, just doing my thing. And and it's not a pity party. I'm just enjoying not being around people. And I never thought my friends were like, what did he just say, an introverted kind of thing? Because that is never how I've ever seen myself. But when you're constantly around people, you get to a point where you're like, some silence is all right.
I how I like to say it because I'm an extrovert
Mm-hmm.
and very extroverted, which a lot of people expect, 100% out of me all the time. And I'm like,
Right.
number one, I'm human. Sometimes my battery does go from 100 to like 98 and even
Right.
like down to 20% like sometimes. Anyways,
We had a little
uh,
dip. We had a dip in energy. It's okay.
Hey, like it's okay. And just because I have a dip in energy also does not mean that I'm not necessarily bad all the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I'm human. I can be at 50% and still be chilling.
Yeah.
Uh, my battery's still working. But I think for me, I've also had to learn like, and how I describe it is I'm extrovertedly independent
Mm.
because I'm extroverted where I love being around people. Like it's an ease for me, striking up conversation. It's something I enjoy, but I also need my quality me time. I also need that an independence time where I can fill my own cup.
Mhm.
And yeah. So I think for
I
me,
love that. I may borrow that. I love, because I
yeah,
was just another thing I was talking to my therapist about today was just this idea of all these different groups that you end up joining or belonging to or experiencing. Because I end up being pretty involved in the community and going to a lot of different things, but there's no one thing that I'm ready to jump all in on. Outside of my brand, I have my own thing and my own community, but I like meeting a lot of different people. I like being involved in a lot of different things. And that means I'm not going to show up and be like, okay, well, I'm going to come to every picnic or every cookout that we're having. I might make it to every third or fourth thing with this group because I'm going to go to that group next Wednesday. And then the following week, I'm going to go to that group. And so there's a lot of different things going on. And that's where my independence comes out, where it's like, no, yeah, I want to do all the stuff, but on my own time and schedule and boundaries.
totally. Yeah.
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 So,
And I think the other thing too is, yeah, like I'm a very vibe person. So, and I always say, as long as we're vibing, we're thriving. And like if I'm in a room and it's a good vibe, I'm gonna be more extroverted, you know?
yeah.
And if I'm in a room that the vibe ain't there, I'm pulling
Hmm.
back. Like you
Have you
said,
ever
like
had this? Yeah. Have you ever had this happen where you've been in a room or at an event, and maybe it was a day where you had two things going on, and you thought, okay, I'm going to go to this one for a little bit, and then I'll switch to go to the next one. And you get to the next one and the vibe is not there, and you think, why didn't I stay with the good vibe? It was so good there. I should have just ridden that out because it was so good.
but I think the purpose of the second one was to show you that the first one was so good.
That is such a good point.
Because you wouldn't have known I mean,
Right.
sometimes you do, but like other times you have to have an
Yeah.
experience like that.
And on the flip side of that too, sometimes we have the vibe we expect
That
and
part.
the good that can still come out of, man, I thought there was going to be 20 people here and there's only four, but now I can have a really good heart conversation with the four people in this room and we can really be more meaningful.
Right.
Or maybe there were 20 people there and we weren't feeling the vibe, but I got to chat with Becca and we stood over on the side and we really connected and were like, this wasn't the vibe I thought, but I'm digging this vibe.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. Man, the stories and expectations that we just, put in our own little noggin and run with sometimes is
Oh,
fun.
it is amazing. So before we go, I want to just pick your brain. We've got a bunch of people out there trying to own their awkward, trying to do their thing. What would you put on them this week? Either advice or a challenge that's just one simple thing they can do.
One simple thing that they can do. One simple thing they can do to own their awkward.
Yeah.
Look at
Or
yourself
to
in
stay
the mirror.
strong and stay you, whichever way you want to take it.
Look at yourself in the mirror and become your own best friend. It's going to be the most awkwardest, most hardest journey that you will ever start. And if you need a way to start it, I'll tell you how I started. I was very uncomfortable, even with the thought of standing in front of the mirror and saying positive affirmations. I had heard about it when I first went into therapy, and somebody within my life at that point was really encouraging me to do it. And I was like, that's awkward. That's weird. I ain't gonna do that. Um,
Mhm.
and then come 2020, I'm starting to hear a lot more people talk about it. And I was like, you know what? Heck with it. I'm gonna figure out a way to get myself in front of the mirror and start speaking life into my life, because the way we talk to ourselves is highly important. We need to be becoming our own best friends, because if you're continuing to bully yourself, you are just building a grave for your potential. So if you can start speaking life into your life, you are uplifting yourself, becoming your biggest cheerleader. So I knew I wanted to start doing that. And I was like, but I feel awkward looking at myself in the mirror. But I look at myself in the mirror when I brush my teeth. So
Mm.
I started while brushing my teeth. And then I started bringing in silly faces while doing it. Because being silly is makes me laugh, and I'm all
Yeah.
about that humor. So I just started looking in the mirror saying, I am worthy, I am strong, I am purpose, and all of these different affirmations. And as time went on, I began to, be able to look at myself in the mirror, and not to say every day was perfect, but was able to start gaining that confidence and that happiness that, I was looking for, because happiness is an inside job and a customized emotion to each and every single one of us. But through that, I was able to, you know, discover some of the parts that I was missing with inside of myself. So I would say own your awkward and get in front of the mirror, start speaking life into your life, because otherwise you're digging a grave for your potential.
Mm, that is a powerful visual right there. All right, now I feel like I need to go brush my teeth again because I feel like I did it wrong this morning. But
I
I have done
also
this. I have done the affirmations thing, and I am a huge believer. I mean, when you're around like-minded people, you have these things where you're like, oh yeah, that, and then also who doesn't do that? But I
Right.
remember that same time when someone said, you gotta look in the mirror and say, I love you, and all these good things, and I'm going, this is the cheesiest thing I've ever heard. There's no way I'm doing it. And I would look in the mirror and then you're just going, yeah, okay, you're not bad.
Yeah,
And- but
totally feel that.
but you have to start somewhere and pretty soon you get to that space of you're having fun with it. You're being goofy
Well,
and I'm
and it's
putting
like,
toothpaste all over the mirror now.
right, like we have, and if you think about it, like we all self-talk, right? Like,
Hmm?
and we do it in moments typically when we're noticing it, is when we're like goofy, or we really remember some of those fun ones, but we often don't always think about the times in which we're bullying ourselves. So when you can like call
Right.
that out and then be like, would I say this to my best friend?
Yeah.
Probably not. Okay, so then why am I telling it to myself?
Right.
But that's also like freaking hard to do at times. And with going back to the positive affirmations, like I don't always forget to, I don't always, do them. But what I started doing and what I just set up in my bathroom is note cards that are just
Yeah.
taped onto the mirror, and it's my visual reminder. And that way, when I'm brushing my teeth and I'm looking in the mirror, I have these affirmations that I can say. So it's just now it's just built into my everyday routine.
Yeah, I have some little window clings on my mirror that
Hmm.
I went to this conference last year and one of the themes was play. And so they had these window clings and they said like, awesome, pow, fantastic, on target. And so I have those on my mirror just as a reminder of I'm going to be on track. It's like that. You know, like the old Batman movies where they like punch them and all of a sudden like the cartoon flash up, they look like that. And so I love it. But it is, you need that reminder because otherwise you just go through your day and all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, that's why that's there.
Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, everybody out there, I can't wait to hear your toothbrush stories after this. Uh,
My dad would say you don't have to brush all your teeth, only the ones you plan to keep.
that's a really good point.
My dad was a dentist, so
I was just gonna ask, was he a dentist? Because that sounds like a dentist thing to say, but good advice, right? It's like you
yeah,
don't have to take care of your body, just the parts that you want to keep, right? Like
it's
it
true.
doesn't matter,
And
you
I
can
think
apply
that
that to anything.
and I think that can be like related to like so many different aspects of your life. Like I
Yeah,
thought about that in some of my goals and some of the dreams. Like I don't have to do it, only the ones that I really want to do.
right. Or even
It's up to
relationships.
me.
I don't have to be involved in all of my relationships, just the ones I want to keep.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Okay, is there any last thing you want to make sure we share before we go? Not that you haven't given us plenty. No pressure. You've given us so much. I just don't want to cut you off mid-thought.
You're good. I don't think so.
Excellent. Well, Becca, this has been a pleasure. Everyone out there, be sure that you go follow Becca. Join some of her Win Wednesdays. Follow her TikTok, her Instagram. And hey, if you have, we didn't get into this very much, but if you have an event, Becca would be happy to get on stage and speak at your event.
I
And
will.
she's an awesome, just talk about good vibes. We want to get her on stage. So she's been on some amazing stages. She's got the experience. Bring her to your event. And you know what? If you're not booking the stage, call your HR person and say, man, I heard this person. We should bring her in. So
And for
you
the
know,
caregivers out there, I do have a new speaking topic. So if you go to my social media, you'll see the topics that I can speak on. But I do have a new one for caregivers called "Burn the Burnout for Caregivers," as I just left the caregiving world. So I'll help you change your inner dialogue, help you with 6 aspects of self-care, and create healthy boundaries. So
I
that
love
one
it. And
new is
I would
coming.
imagine that burn the burnout could relate to beyond
Oh, I've
caregivers as
already gotten
well.
requests for people asking me to do it for like entrepreneurs because they struggle with rest.
Oh yeah, it's
And
huge.
like this can be taken in like the burnout can be taken. Honestly, I can take it anywhere.
Yeah,
It's not just for caregivers, but as somebody who left the caregiving world
right.
and
You
was
know that
told how
firsthand.
to take care of myself, that's why I did it. But I can bring it anywhere.
I love it. Perfect. All
Well,
right,
thank you,
everybody.
Andy.
Follow Becca, give her some love, and of course, go out there, stay strong, stay you, and own your awkward.
Yes. Thank you, Andy.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening in for today's show. Be sure to visit awkwardcareer.com to continue your journey. And of course, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends so they can find their awkward side and learn how to own it.